Ever feel like, totally misunderstood? Like your voice just can't get through.
Yeah.
Now crank that up 1,000 times because you're, get this, a queen, the rightful heir. But everyone's calling you mad, shoving you aside.
Oh, wow. That's rough.
That's Juana of Castile's life in a nutshell. So today, we got to unpack this. Was she really mad, or did some power-hungry folks play her?
Right, right.
We're using the Noble Blood podcast for this.
Yeah.
Specifically, their episode, it's called Juana La Loca.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that one.
So are you ready to, dive deep into this?
Absolutely, let's do it. Always up for some palace intrigue. Plus, the historical debate is fascinating. Like, what really happened with Juana? It makes you think about labels, especially for women in charge back then.
It's heavy stuff. So to set the scene, Juana pops into this world, right? Her parents were King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain.
Oh, wow. Big names.
Huge. Think Columbus, Spanish Inquisition, the whole deal. Talk about intense family dinners, huh?
No kidding. And Juana, despite all that, she gets an amazing education. Fluent in tons of languages. And get this, she had doubts about her religious upbringing, like questioning the very stuff her parents based their rule on. In the 1400s, that's bold.
Not your average princess, for sure. But, royal life, marriage is on the table. Enter Philip the Handsome, Duke of Burgundy. Handsome might be a bit subjected by today's standards, but he was a charmer, and Juana, she fell hard.
Yeah, the marriage was political, for sure, but rumor has it they were super passionate, at least at first, even moved their wedding up, eager to, let's just say, get started on the royal duties. 6 kids later, I think it's safe to say the attraction was real, but here come the cracks in the fairy tale. Philip, it turns out, wasn't exactly faithful, and Juana. She did not take his infidelity lightly.
Let me guess, this wasn't a sleep-on-the-couch situation.
Nope, not at all. One story says she found Philip with a lady-in-waiting, chopped off the woman's hair, and left it on his pillow. Talk about a statement. And this wasn't a one-time thing either. Philip would lock her up whenever she reacted to his affairs. She'd refuse food, sleep, become what they saw as uncontrollable.
So it's a vicious cycle. Her reactions, they make sense, but they just feed this narrative. Juana's volatile, emotional, difficult. Back then, for a woman, especially in power, those labels were dangerous.
Totally. And here's the big question that hangs over everything. Was Juana truly mentally ill, or were her actions just inconvenient for the men who wanted to control her? We'll be wrestling with that throughout this whole thing.
Right. So Juana's dealing with this crazy marriage, and meanwhile, back in Spain, things get wild. Her brother, the heir, dies suddenly. Then, boom, her older sister and her nephew gone too. Just like that, Juana's next in line for the throne. But guess what?
People are already whispering about her.
Exactly. She's unstable, they say. And who do you think sees this as his golden ticket?
Her dear old dad, King Ferdinand.
Bingo. He swoops in, all, Juana's not fit to rule, she's ill. Whether he believed it or just saw a chance to keep his power, who knows? But the result is clear. Juana, the rightful queen, is sidelined. This wasn't even his first rodeo, by the way. He pulled a similar stunt when Juana's mom, Queen Isabella, was on her deathbed.
Wow.
So picture it. Power-hungry dad, cheating husband, and Juana caught in the middle. It's like a royal soap opera.
For sure. But remember, this is a woman's life. It's not a play. Her life gets twisted, rewritten by these powerful men. It really makes you think how much of this madness was real and how much was just a label they slapped on her to control her destiny. So here's Juana, right? The actual Queen of Castile. But her own fathers basically pushed her out using this instability thing as an excuse. And just to make things even more fun, guess who wants in on the power grab?
Philip.
He wants a slice of Castile, too.
Oh, man, this is getting good. So now it's not just Juana versus her dad, it's Ferdinand versus Philip, too.
Exactly. It's like a royal battle royale. They both want Castile, and they're both using Juana's supposed mental state to get what they want. It's a total mess. Forged documents flying around, propaganda, everyone whispering and trying to make Juana look bad. It's impossible to tell what's real anymore.
You'd think someone would stop and say, hold on, what does Juana want in all this?
Sadly, that's the whole tragedy. Her voice is completely lost in this storm of, male ambition, Back then, women, especially royal women, were supposed to be quiet, play their part. And a queen who shows emotions, challenges men, super easy to label her as unstable, unfit to rule.
That's just not fair.
No, it's not. And then, bam, plot twist. Philip dies, young too, 28.
Oh, wow.
Officially, it's typhoid fever, but the rumors started swirling immediately. Poison, maybe Ferdinand's behind it. It's like a real-life Game of Thrones.
Intense. So how does Juana take it?
Well, this is where the whole Juana la Loca thing really takes off. They say she refused to bury him, kept opening his coffin, kissing his face, even paraded around with his body at night, to keep other women away from him, even in death.
Okay, that's some intense grieving,
Yeah.
even for a queen who was known for being dramatic. But here's the thing, right? Are we seeing real grief here, like genuine sadness mixed with whatever mental issues she might have had, or is this another story they're making up to make Juana look worse?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, we might never know for sure, but we have to think about the whole picture. Juana just lost her husband, the father of her children, and she's surrounded by power-hungry men who just want to control her. Think about that isolation, that pressure, that constant
I
fear.
can't even imagine. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any easier for her. Philip's gone, so Ferdinand comes back to Spain, all set to take control again. And, you guessed it, he says Juana's unfit to rule. Locks her up in this palace at Tordesillas, and that's where she stays for the next 46 years.
46 years. That's longer than some kings and queens even rule. How could they do that to her? Keep her locked up like that?
It shows you how brutal royal families could be. Family, even parent and child, didn't mean much when it came to power. Ferdinand knew that as long as people thought Juana was unstable, he was in control.
It's so messed up.
Yeah?
So she's trapped in this palace. What's her life like? Do the stories about her mental state getting worse, are those true?
Well, now it gets even harder to figure out what really happened. Some say she was paranoid, had suicidal thoughts, even that she continued her, let's say, unique relationship with Philip's remains. But again, is this real mental illness or just a reaction to being treated so horribly? Decades locked up, trauma, everyone constantly undermining her that could push anyone over the edge.
It's a total chicken or the egg situation. Was she always mad, or did all this stuff, the betrayals, the losses, did that make her snap?
Exactly. And you can't ignore the effects of being alone for so long, locked up, watched all the time. Every little thing you do is proof that you're unstable. It would mess anyone up.
It's just awful. And then her own son, Charles, he inherits the throne and keeps her locked up too. That's just cold.
Yeah, Charles is a whole other story. He becomes incredibly powerful, rules Spain, the Habsburg lands, becomes Holy Roman Emperor, but his own mom, locked away. He even makes this rule no one can talk to her.
No talking.
Yeah.
That's so harsh. I mean, even if you think someone's mentally ill, wouldn't cutting them off like that just make it worse?
It definitely shows how little they understood mental health back then. Treatment was more about punishment than actually helping. And for Juana, you can't separate her so-called madness from the politics that controlled her entire life.
So after all those years locked away, Juana dies at 75. What's her legacy? Is she just Juana la Loca, the crazy queen? Just a footnote in history.
Her legacy is complicated. She's a tragic figure, for sure. It's a warning about how powerful stories can be and how the winners get to write history. But lately, people are looking at her story in a new way. Not just a victim of her supposed madness, but a victim of everything that happened to her. The expectations for women back then, the way gender roles trapped her.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, if Juana was alive today, would she be diagnosed with a mental illness? Or would she just be difficult, too emotional? Would she still be stripped of her power?
Those are the big questions. Have we learned enough about mental health to prevent another Juana la Loca? Or are the same power dynamics still happening just in different ways?
That's something to think about. It's crazy how relevant Juana's story still feels.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you think about labels, especially madness. How that can just erase a whole person.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been so focused on the Juana la Loca part, we forget she was actually really smart, multilingual, well-educated, and she clearly loved hard, was fiercely loyal. And yeah, she could get angry too.
It's like we're looking at this tapestry, but only seeing this one little dark thread. We miss the whole picture, all the intricate details.
Perfect analogy. And get this, the things they used to say she was unfit to rule, like her passion, her strong will, always protecting what was hers, those could have actually made her a great leader. Imagine a queen who fiercely defends her people, stands up to anyone who gets in her way. That's not crazy, that's powerful.
It's true. It all comes down to who's doing the judging, right? What's crazy in one situation might be totally normal, even admirable in another. And for Juana, the people in power, they just twisted everything to fit their own plans.
Exactly. Makes you wonder how many other women throughout history, labeled mad or hysterical because they didn't fit the mold. Women who spoke their minds, broke the rules, threatened the guys in charge.
We see in stories all the time, right? Ophelia in Hamlet going mad from grief and betrayal. Bertha Mason and Jane Eyre locked away in an attic, her husband calling her insane. These are just stories, but they touch on this deep fear of female power. What happens when women break free?
And we're still drawn to those stories. Maybe deep down, there's this fear of like untamed feminine energy, emotions running wild. But what if, instead of fearing that, we saw it as strength? What if, instead of shutting those women down, we listened to them, learned from them?
So here we are, right? 21st century. Why should we care about some queen who was called mad over 500 years ago?
Because Juana's story reminds us to question the stories we're told, especially the ones that are used to push people down, control them. Who benefits from that story? Whose voices are getting silenced? We need to challenge those stories to build a better world.
It's a call to action, for sure. To think critically about how we judge people, especially women, who aren't afraid to show their feelings, who don't fit in.
If we just slap labels on people, we miss the whole person, their potential. We might even end up doing the same things they did to Juana all those years ago.
So the next time you hear someone called crazy or unstable, start for a second. Think about the whole situation, the power dynamics, what might be happening beneath the surface.
Because Juana's story shows us, history isn't always about the truth. It's about who gets to tell the story. It's on us to question those stories, look for different perspectives, make sure no one's voice gets lost just because someone labeled them mad.
Well said. And if you found this deep dive into Juana Loca's life as fascinating as we did, make sure you subscribe to the Deep Dive for more explorations of history, power, and what it means to be human. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep digging deeper.